Okay, thank you, Megan. Thank you, Yash. Thanks everyone for attending today. It's been great to see such a good turnout and so much engagement from all of you on the other end of this channel. I'm now very pleased to welcome Susan Koski. She's the CISO at PNC Bank. We're going to talk to Susan to get PNC's perspective on FIDO authentication. Briefly, PNC has been a longtime member of FIDO Alliance, is now a member of the board of directors, an active participant in FIDO Alliance, and a big supporter. So thank you, Susan, for joining us today, and thank you for all of PNC's efforts behind FIDO Alliance. To get things started, maybe tell the audience about yourself, your role at PNC, and also who PNC is.
Well, Andrew, thank you for having me join the discussion today, and thank you to all the participants listening to us live. So a little bit of background, PNC, a financial services firm, we're headquartered in Pittsburgh. We really think of ourselves as a Main Street bank, but have, presence in the country's 30 largest markets. And we have diversified capabilities all the way from retail banking, corporate institutional and asset management, but really by combining about what we love about community banking, but with the power of the security technology and capabilities of being a large bank, we really want to move everyone forward financially. And really what we're trying to do from a security perspective is focus on providing the control and the functionality that our customers want in the most secure way, and advancing the practice so that we really ultimately can have less criminals doing less bad things with passwords. I serve as the Chief Information Security Officer at PNC. I've been in information security risk for over 25 years and had the opportunity to work in some really great companies, and really proud to represent the brand here at PNC on the call today with you, Andrew.
Super. Thank you so much. So maybe let's start by, if you could share and talk about the current threat landscape at PNC, especially as pertains to authentication. Like, how are you looking at this?
When you look at the threat landscape, I mentioned, criminals going after the passwords. These threats change daily. So when you look at the criminals, they think about, when you make a move, they make a move. And those threats are constantly changing. So you see customers targeted to give out credentials, the phishable credentials that we're really trying to address with being part of FIDO Alliance, and the UAF. So as part of that, we see criminals really trying to target customers directly to get them to give out information via text message that's scary, that you need to call your bank immediately. And we've even seen them pivot from just straight SMS to going to email to SMS to try to avoid some of the things that are used by the banking industry to take down those nefarious websites, phone numbers, and ultimately email addresses now. And why are they doing it? Well, because it works. And passwords has been around over 50 years. We really need holistically across multi-industries to eradicate passwords. I think somewhere I read, people have X number of passwords and they have to remember them all for the sites or write them down, right? That's the one thing we as security practitioners tell people: don't write them down. But when you have the ubiquity of so many that you have to remember for different websites and things like that, people tend to write them down. But then also, if a site is compromised where you have that password and you've reused it across multiple sites, then the criminals actually may have an easier entree to get in, even if you have, some kind of one-time passcode. So that's kind of, the threat landscape, and it works. And if people can take over accounts, criminals, can have a way of potentially, doing that for financial gain.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. When I was talking earlier, I was talking about the fact that passwords are over 50 years old. But how many 50-year-old technologies do we accept in our daily lives? Very, very few. So understanding those threats and understanding that they're growing and changing, how do you address this challenge? What are the main challenges in providing strong authentication to your customer base? Looking at things like security, usability, all the topics we've been discussing today.
So I think it's, I never think a thing is a challenge. I always call it an opportunity. But with those, when you look at offering service to different clients, whether it's a consumer, a business, that experience has to be one where the options and the authentication options address the threats for those particular businesses. And also that, we really do reduce those phishable credentials, but we do it in a way that a customer wants to use the service. So it has to be the right customer experience, simple, easy to use, friction oriented at the right time, and unfriction oriented at the right time too. So, and then the other thing too is, how do you do that across channels? When you're in the digital channel, or maybe you have a phone channel or an in-person channel, how do you make sure that that experience is similar, but also reduces, the risk of customer impersonation or someone really trying to take over an account via a phone channel? So that cross-channel consistency is really important. And, how do we use something like a mobile channel to essentially enable that in those other channels? And I think the last thing I would leave you with is just, again, balancing security and the customer experience. I think that's just been a mantra for us in the information security and cyberspace for a while. There's always a balance and trade-off. We could have absolutely no risk, but then, our businesses wouldn't be open to serve our customers. So we really have to find that right balance so that we can serve our customers in a secure way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So can you talk a little bit more specifically about how FIDO authentication, FIDO protocols, have fit or will fit into PNC's platform and services?
Yeah, sure. Our real piece around, FIDO protocols and is to get us to passwordless authentication. So, the UAF is the one that we're really focused on and adopting, is getting to that passwordless authentication to remove those passwords. And while we're, still working through some of that, but it's important for us to do that across the organization. So we have a shared mission across all of our businesses, across all of our customers. So that, and we're using FIDO and what FIDO has done to really enable that journey, not only in our industry, but also, we are part of the board. We have someone from the team that sits on the board. We want to continue to advance the practices. It's really important for us to accept the information that we're getting from FIDO, but to give back to the industry as a whole, to really lift up the entire industry and lift up other industries.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's that viewpoint is shared amongst our membership, and I think there's really a unique kind of sense of mission from the participants in FIDO Alliance, and it's really privileged to be able to be part of that. So as you think about FIDO, why did you make that choice? Why do we make the choice for FIDO to be part of your platform and an offering for your users? What did you identify as advantages of using FIDO? Challenges did you face? And anything you could share there?
I would say a couple of things. We when we looked at, building out the platform, we've really built out an enterprise-wide platform able of serving all of our businesses, pulled all of our lines of businesses in, have adoption matrices across all the channels that those businesses serve, and indicate where they are in the adoption of those core services that we provide from a core engineering team, one of the partner teams that we work with. But it's really important here for us because we want, again, to get to that passwordless authentication. But the critical thing is, I don't want your biometric. Let's leave that on the device you're using, that mobile device. You can use your, whether it's Touch ID, Face ID, whatever it might be. And then there's that cryptographic way that we know that's you on that phone, but then your phone is communicating. And so we're really not, taking that biometric and having it in a place. We're leaving it with the user who owns that biometric.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And then obviously FIDO is a standard. So I assume that's part of the appeal of using FIDO. But why are standards-based approaches important to PNC? Are you looking at other standards, incorporating that into your broader systems as well?
So for us, it's important to really adopt a standard. FIDO has a great brand name. It has a great thing that you've done in the industry, bringing people in to solve the problem, having people change their technology to be able to solve the problem. And as a regulated entity, being part of a standards group that is lifting up the ultimate industry and taking advantage of what that group has put together is really important for us to ultimately eradicate passwords. And also we mentioned it earlier, being part of the evolution of those standards as a member and as a board member and really helping drive that is also important. besides FIDO, there's many other standards organizations that we participate in. And you find in these organizations, you get a lot, but you also give a lot. And we talked about that a little bit earlier, but it's kind of, you've got to really have that. Otherwise, we're not going to win the fight in cyber or information security unless we're doing this together. Just because FIDO Alliance, has a certain, your paycheck is paid by one group, and at PNC, our paycheck is from another group. At the end of the day, we're all trying to do the same thing, regardless of where our paycheck is cut from.
Yep. Yeah. Fully agree with you there. So you talked earlier, so you've deployed UAF, just to clarify for people who are not aware. So UAF is the UAF's protocol that
Universal
allows for native
Authentication
apps.
Framework.
What's that?
I'm sorry?
Oh, UAF,
yeah.
Universal Authentication, just to clarify, Universal Authentication Framework. If anyone had questions on that, that's the protocol you deployed first for your native banking app. I'm curious, did PNC work, and we don't need to name any names, but when we decided to move forward with FIDO, how did you work with a partner or a vendor? And what was the decision-making process on that, as much as you can share, kind of thinking about build versus buy?
So the decision-making process, we always go through, does it make sense to build? Does it make sense to buy? How do you do that? And the decision was, it's a little bit of a combination. There's a lot of purchase, and there's a little bit of build on some of the orchestration side. And, we made the decision to use partners because they were part of building out the ecosystem through the FIDO Alliance. They're part of it. They understand the mission. So we thought it also made sense to pull them in, because we thought that their products would evolve as the mission continues to evolve, and we'd stay, as current as possible. And we thought really, having people that have that strong expertise in that space, that strong mission, that strong culture, would really enable us to deliver faster, but also enable us to have additional collaboration and partnership to learn from others.
Okay. Yeah. So that's been deployed now for a bit. Can you share some of the learnings and challenges you've encountered with your FIDO approach and what you've seen so far?
So we're partway through our journey, so there's still some additional work to do. And what we've learned through the journey is a couple of things. One is, the balance of the security and the customer friction, but it's really a couple of things on the identity proofing on the front side of bringing a new customer in, and how do we know that's you, because we can't see you. And then also, let's say that you do lose a device. How do we do that account recovery? How do we make sure that we set that up in such a way that it's simple and it's easy, but it still maintains the original kind of identity proofing authenticity of that? So those are some of the things that, that customer experience, working with our brand folks, working with our front line, really, how do we have that customer experience, but how do we make it easy for the front line to help a customer when they are in one of those situations? And so those are some of the learnings that we've had. We've also learned that as much that we can abstract and provide as, just, APIs out of the box, so that it's easier for all of our CIOs to consume. And then I think last but not least, how do we have the right messaging and information for customers so that they know why we're doing this, how it's helping them, and how to use it? That's really, really important. Again, you can't really do security. Security is really a we, and you've got to do that in conjunction with your technology partners, with your customer experience partners. And so that, I think, has been maybe a little bit harder than sometimes the technology.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's super interesting. A couple of reflections on that. First of all, we talk a lot about what we're doing in FIDO Alliance about UX and user experience, and how I always frequently talk about how the need for user education. So consumers are trained to look for a username, password, dialog box, probably in the top right corner of the screen somewhere. And with passkeys, it all changes, right? So we talk about the need to educate users, but educating the rest of the value chain is equally important, right? So you talked about educating your support staff, your CSRs. How do they, they're going to get calls, or maybe, and how are they meant to handle those? How do they refer, so get those people spun up. And then internally, for anyone who's deploying FIDO internally inside their enterprise with employees, I've heard from several vendors that they see their customers, spending, as much money as they're putting into the license, they spend probably an equal amount actually doing internal marketing to get people
Mm.
understanding why and how they should be using this new form of authentication. At the end of the day, people don't really like change that much. Most people don't like change. And so you need to kind of grease the skids for them to feel comfortable, if not excited, with change. So it sounds like you're aligned with that type of thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. We as humans aren't always easy to change. My husband always laughs at me because I don't like to buy new cars because I don't like to change so
Yep.
much. So I think that resonates really with me personally, and helping really help the users and train people that hey, it's going to be different, but it's actually a good thing that's different. And at the end of the day, you're putting the power in the customer's
Yeah.
hands to really keep their information where they want it instead of giving it to you to store for them. And
Yeah.
that's again really a key benefit of FIDO and what the alliance has done over the years.
Yeah. And the good news is, at least on the consumer authentication front, we've seen this play out before, right? Like when Touch ID was first introduced, that's a whole new paradigm to people. Like, at that point, people were like, first of all, why would I lock my phone? And then they're like, okay, I have a PIN. Why would I need a fingerprint? And they realized, oh, wait, that's easy. And now the same action they took to unlock their phone, they eventually learned, oh, I can download apps with that. I can
Hmm.
then, make payments with that. I can log into websites with that. And that's the same gesture now that we want people to use for, using leveraging passkeys. And so it's been proven that, once people actually have that aha moment, once they, make that change and they like it, and they'll stick with it. So yeah, that's super interesting. As we look, a little further ahead, talk about what you've done. I mean, what role do you see FIDO authentication playing within PNC in the future?
We talked about it, but really, eradicating that reliance on passwords as much as possible. Um, Reducing those phishable authenticators. When you think about the response that you have to have for password resets,
Oh,
we've all made the phone call, and sometimes there's time and effort to get your password reset. Now, this would be really with account recovery lost devices. You'd still have some of that, but you'll have less of that. And I think a better customer experience because they're not waiting for a password because like it's with them, right? It's them
yeah, yeah,
that's kind of bound to their phone. So they don't have to worry about what was it and what was my mother's maiden name. They don't have to worry about any of those things. And I think that's where FIDO authentication plays, an incredible mission, but it also plays an incredible thing with things like account takeover. It's going to be much harder, incredibly much harder to take over accounts. And then, when you have fraud, it is or someone has, I mean, if think of anyone who's ever had their house broken into, that kind of experience of just that, fear. And you think about the same thing
yeah,
in, hey, someone's gotten into my bank account, right? That's really a terrible moment for someone, an incredibly terrible moment. But the more that you use things like this, the less and less of that you're going to have. It's going to make it so much harder for the criminals to really leverage those channels to come in. And then the thing you have to watch is how do you really kind of extend that capability to an omni-channel experience? Because then again, they'll pivot to maybe something in person or something on the
mm,
phone if they're not using the digital channel to try to, unfortunately do bad.
yeah.
And, because it works and, it's a bona fide economy. There was some reports that Cybercrime Magazine did that cybercrime is essentially the world's third largest economy.
Wow.
And, they also had some statistics in there that said that cybercrime is about 30% of US gross domestic product. Just think about that 30%. So it's like, you could put a bunch of companies together, but this is what we're collectively
Yeah,
all really trying to thwart. And again, it works. It's a bona fide business.
yeah,
So, and we've got scrum masters, the criminal agencies have scrum masters and all those different things to try to do what they're doing and perpetrate crime. So again, I think with FIDO and what the role it can play an incredible shift. Like that shifting left we often hear when we talk about application security, but that shifting left to really enabling the customer, but then minimizing some of the friction and the negative experience that a customer could have. I think the world could be our oyster here and what we will accomplish with FIDO as part of it.
that's great. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I totally agree with you. I didn't know that data. And that's both terrifying and fascinating at the same time. These cyber criminals are certainly not lazy, and they'll find a way to make a buck. And it is a huge industry, cyber crime and e-commerce crime. And there's, phishing kits available for, a couple $100 with, full support, professional support. So it's not just, one-off criminals, but there's actually a full ecosystem supporting them. And I know our general point of view is that at a minimum, we need to make it harder for people to take over accounts. It can't be someone sitting behind a keyboard somewhere, launching remote attacks to steal credentials.
Yeah. And when you look at the criminals, they're not sitting necessarily overseas. They're in the US, and they have rings, and they move, and they're in different cities, and they use different techniques, and they're here, right? That they know how our systems work across multi-industries, and they study them, right? Just like you and I both might study for a test. They're studying, and they're finding the weaknesses and really trying to exploit those weaknesses. I think it's just really important for us to say, passwords are, again, 50 plus years they've been out there.
Yeah.
And it's time. It's beyond time for us to move past passwords.
Well, I can't say it any better than that, Susan. Thank you so much. So I think it's a good place to wrap up. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or any other thoughts to share with our audience today?
I think I would just leave the audience with it's a wonderful group, a very supportive group. If you aren't joining and you're thinking about it, please consider it. And really have enjoyed the time that I've spent with Andrew and the FIDO team, as well as my team member working on the board. And again, together we fight together. So the more of us that fight together, the better off all the industries will be.
Amen. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Susan. I'm going to wrap up here and then turn things over to Megan Shamos to wrap up today's summit. So thanks again, Susan.
Thank you, Andrew.